Hello friends, welcome back. I'm Beth, here to help you fulfill your potential in meditation. As most of you know, I don't have just one method that I teach to everybody, like one size fits all. Instead, I much prefer to teach people one-on-one. And the reason is that you're all different. So please use these videos as a guideline. And if there's anything that isn't quite working for you or anything that doesn't quite fit, then be in touch and I'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you one-on-one. Today's video is about learning to discern greed-rooted impulsion moments. In Pali, we call these lobha, mula, javanas. Lobha means greed, mula is root, and javana is the impulsion moment. Now, this is going to make much more sense to you if you're already familiar with discerning the wholesome impulsion moments, the kusala javana. And the reason is that discerning the greed-rooted impulsion moments is very similar to discerning the wholesome impulsion moments. Now, I've made a separate video on learning to discern those wholesome impulsion moments. So if you haven't done so already, I'd suggest that you watch that video and do the practice if you can, because this one's going to be much more intuitive to you if you're familiar with discerning those wholesome impulsion moments in practice. Now, if you are familiar with discerning those wholesome impulsion moments, then you will remember that impulsion moments usually arise in groups of 7, and they are the active part of the mental process. So based on the decision that was made about how to pay attention to the object, we get 7 impulsions that pay attention in that way. So if the decision was made to pay wise attention to the object, we're going to get wholesome impulsions. And if the decision was made to pay attention to the object with greed, we are going to get greed-rooted impulsions. We're going to get 7 moments of greed, 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 greed. Now, it's really important when we're learning to discern the mind, when we're learning to discern mentality, that not only we see those impulsion moments arising and passing away, but also we can learn to see the different mental factors within each impulsion moment. I'm not going to list all of the different types of mental factors within each greed-rooted impulsion moment now. For now, I'll just say that usually there are either 19, 20, 21 or 22 different mental factors in these impulsion moments. And these impulsion moments come in one of 3 flavors. So we have the regular greed-rooted impulsion moment that arises when we pay attention to the object with craving or attachment. The second flavor is what we call greed and wrong view, or lobha ditthi in Pali. Ditthi means wrong view. And this is when we have greed, craving or attachment for something because of the wrong belief that that thing is in some way permanent, so it's lasting, or it's inherently happiness, it's the source of our happiness, or it's me or it's mine. And so we attach to something thinking, this is it, this is going to last for a long time, or this is it, this is going to make me happy, or this is it, this is me or mine. And when we attach to something in that way, the impulsion moment is greed plus wrong view. The third flavor is what we call greed plus conceit, lobha mana in Pali. So mana means conceit. Now the Buddha said there are 3 kinds of conceit. There is superiority conceit, which is I think I'm better. There is inferiority conceit, which is I don't think I'm as good. And there's also equality conceit, I'm just the same as you. And all 3 of these are accompanied by greed. Why? Because they are clinging to an idea of self. And so we have just plain greed, we have greed and wrong view, and we have greed and conceit. And all 3 of these flavors can arise with or without joy, and also with or without sloth and torpor. So that's what the greed-rooted impulsion moments are. What do we do if we want to discern them in practice? Well, a good place to start is to rebuild your concentration. So if you've already practiced the jhanas, then you want to enter the jhana up to the highest jhana that you've attained until your concentration is strong and stable. If you haven't practiced those jhanas, then you will need to establish a deep and stable access concentration. When you've re-established your concentration, then you want to bring your attention to the heart until you can clearly see those mind moments arising and passing away very quickly. When you can see the mind moments arising and passing away very quickly, we then want to prompt a greed-rooted mental process. So we want to pay attention to something with greed. Now it's going to help us if we can do that with our eyes closed. So we could imagine, for example, something that we crave, like, I don't know, chocolate cake, or if you're me, hummus, and imagine that thing and pay attention to it with craving. When we pay attention to that thing with craving, we're going to prompt a greed-rooted mental process, and we're going to have those greed-rooted impulsions arise. So when we prompt that craving, we then bring attention to our heart, see if we can discern those greed-rooted impulsions arise. When we're skillful in discerning those greed-rooted impulsions, we can then try to discern the first mental factor within those impulsion moments. Now, in order to do this clearly, we might need to have several goes. So we might need to prompt that greed-rooted mental process several times. So prompting the mental process, discerning, prompting, discerning, prompting, discerning. And because we are prompting an unwholesome mental process, we might notice our concentration drop. So if our concentration drops, then we want to re-establish our concentration before we continue. So it might be that you need to spend a little bit more time in the jhana or re-establishing your access concentration before you continue with the discernment. So prompting, discerning, until you feel confident with the first mental factor, and then we're going to repeat the process for the second mental factor, then the third, until we've discerned all of the mental factors in the impulsion moments one by one. When we've discerned them one by one, we then want to discern them as a group. And it's quite a big jump to go from discerning mental factors one by one to discerning 19, 20, 21, 22 as a group. So what you might want to do is build up gradually. Discerning first one mental factor, then two together, then three together, then four together, and so on until you can discern the whole group of mental factors in that moment. When you're confident discerning all of the mental factors in that moment together in a group, we can then do so with all of the different flavors. So not only with greed, but also with greed and wrong view, and with greed and conceit, and with and without joy, with and without sloth and torpor. And when we feel confident, we then want to do the same thing for all of the different mental processes that can arise. So not only holding a mental image or imagining cake or imagining hummus, but also when we actually see something with the eye, when we hear something with the ear, smell a smell with the nose, taste a taste with the tongue, or feel a sensation with the body. So that's what I have to say today on discerning those greed-rooted impulsion moments. It's a lot of work, but it's also incredibly interesting practice, and it shows us very clearly what the habits of our mind are and how often those greed-rooted impulsions are arising. What I would suggest is that you get off of the screens, get onto the cushions, and actually give the practice a go. If there's anything that isn't working for you, if there's anything that's unclear, then be in touch and I'll be more than happy to discuss those things with you individually. As most of you know, I do all of my work on a donation basis, so I encourage you to support me either through Patreon or through my website so that I can continue to make these videos. Thank you so much for your support. Wishing you the best with your meditation.